Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare. Gopi Jana Ballava Giribaradhare. Gopi Jana Ballava Giribaradhare. Yashodanandana Raja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Raja Janaranjana. Yamunatira Vanachare. Yamunatira Vanachare. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare. Gopi Jana Ballava Giribaradhare. Gopi Jana Ballava Giribaradhare. Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana. Yamunatira Vanachare. Yamunatira Vanachare. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare. Jai Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada. Jai Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada. Jai Jai Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Jai Jai Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Jai Vishnupad, Paramahansa, Parivrajacharya, status of Srimad, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki, ISKCON's founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki, Shri Shri Radha Radhanath Ki, Shri Giri Govardhan Ki, Shri Caitanya Mahaprabhu Ki, Sankirtan Yagya Ki, Gaur Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 21. Instructions by Maharaj Prithu, verse 33. Yes, okay. Tam eva yuyam bhajatatma vritibhir mano vacha kaya gunai swa karmabhi amayana kama dugangre pankajam yatadikara vasitarta siddhayo tameva yuyam bhajatatma vritibhir manovachakaya gunai swakarmabhi amayana kama durgangri pankajam yatadikara vasitarta siddhaya tameva yuyam bhajatatma vritibhir manovachakaya gunai swakarmabhi amayana kama dugangri pankajam Yatadikara vasitarta siddhaya Tameva yuyam bhajatatma vrittibhir Manovachakaya gunaisvakarmabhi Amayana kama dugangri pankajam Yatadikara vasitarta siddhaya Okay. Tam, unto him, eva, certainly, yam, all you citizens, bhajata, worship, atma, own, vrittibhi, occupational duty, mana, mind, vacha, words, kaya, body, gunai, by the particular qualities, swakarmabi, by occupational duties, amayana, without reservation, kamaduga, fulfilling all desires, angri pankajam, the lotus feet, yata, as far as, adhikara, ability, avasita arta, fully convinced of one's interest, siddhaya, satisfaction. Just as a matter of interest, in your copy of the Sanskrit there, the last word is siddhaya or siddhayo? Ah, right, yeah. That's enough. Okay. Huh? What? Yeah, that's Visarga. Siddhaya, technically speaking. Translation. King Prithu advised his citizens, engaging your minds, your words, your bodies, and the results of your occupational duties, and being always open-minded, you should all render devotional service to the Lord, according to your abilities in the occupations in which you're situated. You should engage your service at the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead with full confidence and without reservation. Then you will surely be successful in achieving the final objective in your lives. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. It's not extremely long, but it's a bit of a long purport, so please focus your attention. As stated in the 18th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Swakarmana tam abhyarchya, one has to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead by one's occupational duties. This necessitates accepting the principle of 4 varnas and 4 ashrams. Prithu Maharaj therefore says, Gunai Swakarma Bhi. This phrase is explained in Bhagavad Gita. Chaturvanya maya srishtam gunakarma vibhagasha. The 4 castes, the Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Sudras, are created by the Supreme Personality of Godhead according to the material modes of nature and the particular duties discharged in those modes. A person who is situated in the mode of goodness is certainly more intelligent than others. Therefore, he can practice the Brahminical activities, namely, speaking the truth, controlling the senses, controlling the mind, remaining always clean, practicing tolerance, having full knowledge about one's self-identity, and understanding devotional service. In this way, if he engages himself in the loving service of the Lord as an actual Brahman, his aim to achieve the final interest of life is attained. Similarly, the Kshatriya's duties are to give protection to the citizens, to give all his possessions in charity, to be strictly Vedic in the management of state affairs, and to be unafraid to fight whenever there's an attack by enemies. In this way, a Kshatriya can satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead by his occupational duties. Similarly, a Vaishya can satisfy the Supreme Godhead by properly executing his occupational duties, engaging himself in producing foodstuffs, giving protection to cows, and trading, if necessary, when there's an excess of agricultural production. Similarly, because Sudras do not have ample intelligence, they should simply engage as workers to serve the higher statuses of social life. Everyone's aim should be to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead by engaging his mind in thinking always of Krishna, his words in always offering prayers to the Lord or preaching about the glories of the Lord, and his body in executing the service required to satisfy the Lord. As there are 4 divisions within our body, the head, the arms, the belly, and the legs, similarly, human society taken as a whole is divided into 4 classes of men according to their material qualities and occupational duties. Thus, the Brahminical or intelligent men have to execute the duty of the head. The Kshatriyas must fulfill the duty of the arms. The Vaishya class must fulfill the duty of the belly, and the Sudras must fulfill the duty of the legs. In executing the prescribed duties of life, no one is higher or lower. There are such divisions as higher and lower, but since there's actually a common interest to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there are no distinctions between them. The question may be raised that since the Lord is supposed to be worshipped by great demigods like Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and others, how can an ordinary human being on this planet serve him? This is clearly explained by Prithu Maharaj by the use of the word yatadikara, which means according to one's ability. If one sincerely executes his occupational duty, that will be sufficient. One does not need to become like Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, Indra, Lord Caitanya, or Ramanujacharya, whose capabilities are certainly far above ours. Even a Sudra, who is in the lowest stage of life, according to the material qualities, can achieve the same success. Anyone can become successful in devotional service, provided he displays no duplicity. It is explained here that one must be very frank and open-minded, a mayana. To be situated in a lower status of life is not a disqualification for success in devotional service. The only qualification is that whether one is a Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Sudra, he must be open, frank, and free from reservations. Then, by performing his particular occupational duty under the guidance of a proper spiritual master, he can achieve the highest success in life. As confirmed by the Lord himself, Striyo Vaishyas tata Shudras tepiyanti param gatim, which is Bhagavad Gita chapter 9, verse 32. It does not matter what one is, whether a Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Sudra, or a degraded woman. If one engages himself seriously in devotional service, working with body, mind, and intelligence, he's sure to be successful in going back home, back to Godhead. The Lord's lotus feet are described here as Kama Dugangri Pankajam, because they have all power to fulfill the desires of everyone. A devotee is happy even in this life, because although in material existence we have many needs, all his material needs are satisfied. And when he at last quits his body, he goes back home, back to Godhead, without a doubt. Amazing. Tam eva yuyam bhajatatma vritibhya manovachakaya gunaisvakarma be. Amayana kama dugangri pankajam yatadi kara vasitarta siddhaya. Prithu Maharaj advised his citizens, engaging your minds, your words, your bodies, and the results of your occupational duties, and being always open-minded, you should all render devotional service to the Lord, according to your abilities and the occupations in which you're situated. You should engage your service at the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead with full confidence and without reservation. Then you will surely be successful in achieving the final objective in your lives. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimad Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarane Vanchakalpaturibhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Sri Krishna Caitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadha Shivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Yes, this is nice verse and really nice purport. Yeah. Yes, okay, so it's Prithu Maharaj continuing with his, you could say it's sort of like a logical presentation step by step to the citizens about how one should live, basically, in simple terms. Yes, so there was mention of following the previous acharyas. There was mention about following scripture, the instructions given in scripture, and a few other things, following the instructions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So these are all very important, valid instructions, as essential instructions for anyone who wants to make spiritual progress. Without doing these things, what to speak about achieving perfection in life, going back to Godhead, but one will not even be able to be a happy human being or successful human being. One will find oneself repeatedly in distressing situations which one has no real way of making, like, at least a complete solution to. It's very difficult. It really is very difficult. So now here in this particular verse, what is being spoken about, what is being emphasized, is that everyone has to do their duties. Shri Shri Radha Shri Giri Govardhan Shri Caitanya Mahaprabhu Ki Jai. Yeah, everyone has to do their duties. And if everyone does their duties and is fixed in Krishna consciousness and does those duties as services to the Supreme Personality of Godhead and lives like this, and also including being open-minded, the verse says, and Prabhupada talks further about that as he goes through in the later stage of the purport. It's very nice, actually, how he talks about being open-minded. So, and so on like that. It's really like a very nice overview of this whole thing of doing your duties and how to live yourself, how to conduct your own life. So Prabhupada he quotes Bhagavad Gita, what is it, 4:13? 4:13? 4:13? I think it's 4:13. Chaturvarnya maya srishtam guna karma vibhagasha. Yeah. That Chaturvarnyam, the four varnas, Prabhupada translates the term as castes. Maya srishtam means were created by me. Krishna, one name of Krishna, not so well known, but Prabhupada gave it to a devotee in London who was a real character. And so I remember this name because it was the name of a real character. Srishti Karta means, Srishti means the creator, and Karta means the doer, the one who does the creation. So Varnyam Maya Srishtam. The four varnas were created by me, by Krishna. And therefore they're extremely foundational concepts and parts of proper living as a human being. You know, of course, the way that idea has been sort of adapted or adopted, or the term has been used, this word caste, is generally when so many people hear this term caste, they think, oh, this is bad. It's just by definition, it's just bad. But Prabhupada, being a transcendental person, is not afraid of using such a word, which, if it's understood properly, is it's a suitable type of term. So, but strictly speaking, the 4 varnas, Krishna says, means the 4 occupational duties, maya srishtam, they were created by me for human beings. And Prabhupada on numerous occasions, really quite often, would talk about this, how these 4 varnas, Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Sudra, occupational divisions of life, groupings of specific types of people, how it's just a natural fact that in human society, whether officially or unofficially, it just is structured like that. Back in the old days, of course, the Vedic days, it was official. Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Sudra, they would have their different areas in a town or a city where only they would live. Of course, Sudras would generally or often live with their masters, but otherwise the Brahmins would live with the Brahmins, the Kshatriyas with the Kshatriyas, and the Vaishyas with the Vaishyas. That was just completely normal. And of course, when children were born to those different families, they're born into a particular social environment. And therefore there was this natural tendency to just adopt that way of life oneself. Other than some unusual exceptions, that was just universally happening, and not because it was imposed on anyone, but because that's just how people were, even by birth. So, but we see today, now of course the idea of a caste system, literally as such, is frowned upon, particularly outside of India. Sure, in Western society, the term caste system, it's almost like a 4-letter word, or, don't mind me putting it like that. It's really not appreciated. And it's sort of taken to be like a sign of degradation. Yeah. But still we see that in human society, even now, right now, nowadays, there are these divisions, not entirely, of course, but in many respects, you get these divisions. You get people who are Brahminical, they're intellectual, they may be like teachers, that sort of person. Or priestly type people, you get these types of people who they're just inclined like that, and they just want to be like that, and so they are like that, generally speaking. And then of course you get the Kshatriya types, the warriors, and the administrators, people who are just like that. That's their nature, that's what they like to do, it's what they want to do, and in so many cases that is what they do. Yes, so I remember, I've mentioned before, some of you would perhaps remember how when Ramanujacharya Prabhu and I were raising funds to build this temple back in the It was sort of getting towards the mid-80s, like, might have been 84, might have been 85 even, but it was like that. We were somewhere in South Africa, and we met one gentleman. He was a soldier. He was like an officer, kind of higher level soldier in the South African army, and he invited us to his house. You know, we were raising funds in a certain way, so we would go to people's houses often. So anyway, we went to his house and we asked him, I remember asking him, why are you in the army? Because he volunteered. And he was not like, you know, an administrator in the army, just sitting behind a desk. He was in the front lines. And he told us of how in, you know, certain parts of southern Africa, he had been engaged in military operations and shooting people. And so we're saying, really? I mean, why you do that? And he just answered very straightforwardly. He said, I like it. Yeah, I really like it. And you could see that's what he was. He was a Kshatriya of the category, the warrior type Kshatriyas. He was one of them. You know, Prabhupada also spoke about how when there's a war like in Ukraine or wherever, the young fellows get drafted, forced into the army, and they can't say, well, listen, you know, it's okay. I don't think I'll do it, thanks. You got to go. You got to go, and they go. And that's why right now around the world, not so much here, but in Western Europe, America, there's lots of Ukrainians because they just got out, because they just didn't want to get dragged into it. But anyway, Prabhupada talks about this, and Prabhupada talks about how these young boys, you know, late teens, early 20s, they are not like real adults. They're not mature people. And there's just a gun is stuck in their hands, and they're given a bit of training, and then they just stick them right there where it's all happening. And so many of them are just so scared, just so frightened. They hate it. They hate it. It's just horrific, terrible for them. And some of them, I was told, wet their pants and etc. in the situation because it's just too much for them. So they're not real Kshatriyas. They're just children, really, just big children. Yeah, but still there are Kshatriya types. You know, it's interesting in India, interesting point, that since independence, the great majority of the prime ministers have been from Brahmin families. You know, Gandhi, Brahmin, and all these Gandhis, that it's all a Brahminical family historically. And but Modi, I think what's Modi is a Vaishya. I'm not sure traditionally. But it's meant to be Kshatriyas. And they're meant to be advised by the Brahmins. Or we have in America now the current president, we will not mention any names, he's a Vaishya. He is a full-scale Vaishya. He's a businessman, a wheeler dealer, and heavy cheat in business. He's not a Kshatriya. Anyway, such is life. But Vaishyas, there are Kshatriyas nowadays, to some degree, and there are definitely Vaishyas. There's a big Vaishya community. And Sudras, of course, as always, the majority of people are Sudras. And all they want is just to work, get some money, and be able to live. So even though the Varnashram system as such is not being practiced or not recognized like this, but still, because it's just the natural way how human beings exist, it's like that. And like in Russia, Prabhupada talked about how in Russia, they want everyone to be equal and, no social stratification at all. But they couldn't stop it. The Vaishyas, people just started doing business. I don't know if I told you, but in Lithuania, which was part of the Soviet Union, in one of the main cities, Kaunas, during the communist period, our devotees established a center. And Lithuania was one of the most Western geographically of the countries that were part of the Soviet Union. And so devotees, preachers would come in and they'd visit Lithuania. It was sort of almost like the center of the preaching in the Soviet Union. So the devotees would smuggle books in to the country, printed in the West, but they'd have to smuggle them in, and they would do that. Then they decided, let's just try to print. Let's try to print in Lithuania, which was officially very communist. So they did, and they found a printer. Somehow or other they moved around. They found a printer who was willing to print these banned books. As long as he got his money, he was willing to do it. He would do it after hours. And every day they would steal some paper, because the paper was under strict government control, but they'd steal some. And so he printed Bhagavad Gita at night and on weekends. It took a while, a couple of weeks or something like that. As it was going on, the devotees found out this man is a member of the KGB. Yeah, and the KGB. You think the National Party was heavy. Gee whiz, the KGB, just out of this world. How many of their own people, how many thousands and thousands they killed. Gee. So the devotees thought, we're finished. That's it. They'll lock us up, throw away the keys, and that's it for the rest of our lives. Because that's what they did. So, but it was too late. The man was already printing the books. And after a while, whatever, so many days or a couple of weeks, they found the man did not arrest them. Rather, he took their money, said thank you, and off he went. Because he was doing business. What to speak of just being a communist? He was KGB. KGB was by invitation only. and only for like the highest, most intelligent young people, mainly men. So Prabhupada talks about how they could not suppress, they could only suppress that tendency to manifest some qualities according to Varnashram or Varna divisions. They could only suppress it so much for so long, and then it just became impractical. And when, pardon my talking about Russia, but when Leonid Brezhnev, you would have heard of him. Anyway, he was the top man for a while. You heard of Leonid Brezhnev? Good. You're better off. But Leonid Brezhnev was the top man, the Secretary General, they call him, of the Communist Party, effectively the president. So he at some point decided he wanted, or maybe with his, the support of his friends, other big men, he wanted to get a good car, like a good car. He wanted to get an Aston Martin. You heard of Aston? They're very expensive. It's like, very fast, like Ferraris. It's the same idea, same sort of group of vehicles. So what Aston Martin did, they drove one to Moscow so he could test drive it. And there was a cartoon in one of Punch magazine, I don't know if you're familiar with that, British Humour, Punch magazine. There was a little cartoon, and Leonid Brezhnev's mother is speaking to him and saying, "Leonard, you want an Aston Martin?" And she says, "Well, listen, that's okay, that's all right, but what are you going to do if the communists take over?" In other words, they're not really communists any longer. And his friends were supporting it because they wanted to also get high-level material things. So anyway, the thing is, of course, nowadays, all these things are mixed. A Brahmin is partly a Sudra, and etc., etc. It's like that. It's mixed, even though, certain things can be recognized and are there to some degree. But otherwise, in general, things are quite mixed up. But whatever one's occupational duty is, one should do it. Really do it very nicely, dedicate yourself to it. Not just it's just how I make money to live, but actually dedicate yourself to it in the mood of serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And if you do like that, Prabhupada says, then right at the end of the purport he says that you'll go back to Godhead. If you do like that, you'll definitely go back to Godhead. Then Prabhupada sort of briefly explores an important and very interesting point, that even though there is this social structure, and it's clear the Brahmins are in the highest position, Prabhupada says here, they are the most intelligent. Because they are the most in the mode of goodness, they are the most intelligent, and because they're the most intelligent, they're in the highest position. So these statuses are there, but still in devotional service, those things are not really taken seriously. As Prabhupada says, in executing the prescribed duties of life, no one is higher or lower. There are such distinctions as higher and lower, But since, for the devotees, there's actually a common interest to satisfy the Lord, so there are no distinctions made between them. And Prabhupada, you've probably heard, you probably read, that Prabhupada said on a number of occasions that the pujari offering the arati to the deities and the devotee who's cleaning the floor in the temple room, they're on the same level. And the pujari has not got the right to think that, oh, look at this fellow just cleaning the floor. But look at me, I'm big pujari. Pujari Devata. Sort of like a demigod. No, so there are no distinctions. And what is it? It's the second canto. Srila Prabhupada talks about Varnashram. And he talks about two categories of people, Sudras and women. And he says that actually the Sudras, in a certain sense, they are in a better position than the Brahmins because they have more masters to serve. Whereas the Brahmins, they don't really have masters to serve oftentimes. They are the masters. They're at the top. So it can be corrupting to be in such a position. Whereas the Sudras, they're servants of the Vaishyas, the Kshatriyas, the Brahmins. They're servants. And therefore it's a very advantageous position for Krishna consciousness to just be in this mood of service and surrounded by opportunities to serve. And about ladies, you know what Prabhupada says in that particular case? It's very interesting. He says that, in a traditional type of sense, the husband, well, the spiritual master is there, the lady's spiritual master. And then the husband is also traditionally, in Vedic terms, meant to be able to be like a real spiritual master to the wife. Not just officially, but he's meant to be advanced enough that he can actually, really help in that type of way, help his wife. So in this way, Prabhupada says, therefore, the wife has two gurus. That is better than having one guru. Yeah, it's a better position than the husband has, because the husband has just one guru. But the wife now has two gurus. As long as the husband, anyway, you understand the point. Sometimes, anyway, in however many cases the husband may not really be up to it so much. And definitely in some cases, there's a letter Prabhupada writing to a lady disciple whose husband is just, he's really not up to it. And Prabhupada tells the lady, then you take the spiritual leadership in the family. You do it. Yeah. So anyway, that's an interesting point. Dasa das, anudas. Yes, we not only don't need, but we must be careful to avoid getting into making distinctions which are not based on real spiritual considerations. Then Prabhupada talks about being very frank and open-minded, amayana, being frank and open-minded. Yes. Prabhupada says, to be situated in the lower status of life is not a disqualification for success in devotional service. The only qualification is that whether one is a Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Sudra, He must be open, frank, and free from reservations. And I forget exactly where it was, but as I recall, Prabhupada uses the term duplicity. Should be free from duplicity, yes. Anyone can become successful in devotional service provided he displays no duplicity. Duplicity is a great disqualification in Krishna consciousness. Duplicity in Bhaktivinoda Thakur talking about the demons in Krishna's Vrindavan Leela. Bakasura represents duplicity. Bakasura. Because, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta actually says, because he was sitting there on the banks of of a body of water when Krishna and the cowherd boys came. He was sitting there trying to make it look like he was meditating. But actually he was meditating on eating them. Yeah. So this is duplicity. So it's a very important qualification not to be a liar. You know, in the 8th canto, the story of Bali Maharaj, Bali Maharaj himself says that the planet Earth is tolerating so much, but the planet Earth cannot tolerate a liar. It's there in one of the verses in Srimad Bhagavatam. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Any comments, questions?
Full explanation. I was thinking I made up the riddle for people to think about. I said, why is staying in the guest house very different than surrendering to Krishna? And the answer is, staying at the guest house, it's important to have reservations, and surrendering to Krishna, it's not. It's important not to have reservations.
Okay.
So in this case, that it seems, maybe you could elucidate on it, that the difference between the caste system and the varnashrama is that in the varnashrama, each person, it's the duty-based ethics. Each person is doing his duty to Krishna and trying to be of service to the others. Whereas in the caste system, they're thinking, how can I reserve something for myself? Some position, or I'll take some of the money before it's distributed, or some kind of reserve that they've made for themselves. Would that be where and like you're saying, the distinction, the pujari.
Right.
So we be careful not to reserve it for ourselves.
Yeah, sure. You know what one devotee told me? He was associating with the pujaris in, I think it's the Tirupati temple, but one of those it might have been Sri Rangam, one of the old classical South Indian temples. So he was associating with the Brahmins, lots of Brahmins. And he said that the ones who offer the food, there's a group of them, they offer the food. He said they offer chant the mantras, etc. And then they look at the food and they decide, I'll have this, and no, I want that one. No, I want that one. And the offering is still going on. Yeah. The offering is still going on. And they said to be in that group of the Brahmins was considered to be very advantageous, because you could get to choose what of the Mahaprasadam you wanted, which is a bit of a corruption, really. Thank you. Okay. Hari Bol. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.